just show of hands. Who here thinks public school is the best option for kids? Okay. And who thinks private school is the best option for kids? Who thinks homeschool is the best option for kids? And then some of you guys didn't raise your hands at all.
It's so challenging to pick one right answer for that, because essentially what you're asking is, who do you trust the most with your children? Who do you trust to give them the cultural values that I have and then fill in the gaps where I don't necessarily know the answer, but I trust that they're experts and are going to give my children the attention that they need in order to develop so that they can be a better version of themselves?
If I had to choose one, it's public school. It is the best tool we have to give everybody a chance at a good education, no matter where you come from, how much money you have. Public schools, where not everybody thinks the same and people are coming from all walks of life, is a good microcosm of that global experience, where you can learn critical thinking skills and learn how to be a good community member, because not everybody looks like you or thinks like you.
Kali, you were shaking your head.
Oh, well, first of all, our schools are more segregated ever than our public schools, especially in blue states. New York and California have the most segregated schools. And on top of that, we are in a place where our public schools are not safe, especially the last 20 years. And I just don't see why sending our kids to these environments where it's unsafe. We also used to be, because I used to be on the left, we used to be against the institutionalization of our children. These kids are being institutionalized, having these places where there's 2,000, 3,000 kids. I'm okay with public school, but the problem with it is that it's become an environment where it's almost like the school to prison pipeline. We used to talk about that in the 90s. We're not talking about that anymore. And I think that's something that parents need to wake up about, and America needs to wake up about, the institutionalization of our children.
What's going on, everyone? It's Dr. Kenny here today, and we're going to go back and we're talking about public school, private school, homeschooling. What is the best option? So, as you guys probably know, if you're new to this channel, that I'm a big proponent of homeschooling and private school. I believe public school is the worst option possible to put any child in America. All you have to do is look at the results. Look, this is not my opinion. Just look at the results, right? If you had all the money in the world, would you put your kid in a public school? Likely you're going to say no. And the stats prove this otherwise. If you look at the SAT score, which is the metric that a lot of colleges use to admit kids into their institution, public school kids perform at almost nearly at the bottom. Now, some people may argue exactly how that sample size is. For instance, homeschoolers have a smaller sample size, therefore there's that quality argument. Public school people would like to make the argument that private school filter out low performing students inherently, so they get less of them. That's also the cause for the lower average SAT score. But I just think that in a public school, the environment is not conclusive into a productive learning environment. That's all I'm trying to say. But hey, I digress. What made me decide to do this video? I saw an article that I really want to talk about because it kind of highlights how I felt during the time of 2020, as that was the time my first son was born, and I started evaluating how would I want my kids to be brought up. And public school, for me anyway, has always been negative, even in my own personal life. My mom, right? Because the argument is public school is about access. Okay, but my argument is, what's the point of having access to something that is almost guaranteed to give you a bad outcome? All you have to do is look at the National Education Association and how they measure the proficiency rates of minority students, actually any student. And you see that they most of the time they perform better in public school and in private school and charter schools. Hell, homeschooling is even showing that kids who are homeschooled have a better education from their parents because it's not so restrictive. And that's one of the reasons why I'm a big advocate of homeschooling, and this is why I like school choice, because for the amount of money you spend on homeschooling, which is about $600 a year, I know I'm personally, I budget for this stuff. I use an education program called Kumon. I'll probably put a screenshot of the website, and that's what I use those workbooks to teach my kids right now. And he's like 3 years old. He's already learning how to trace. He already knows how to associate colors. That's a big advantage to have before he starts first grade. And a lot of Asian parents follow this curriculum. That's why I picked it as well, because they have something that works. Hey, if it's not broke, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? So I just say, okay, Asians are performing well at academics. Let me see what they're doing, and let me take that and use it for my kid. That's all I did. This is why I say a lot of this disproportional outcomes when people try to make a race narrative, or, oh, the poor kids perform worse than rich kids. A lot of the times I believe is mostly about the behaviors and systems that is passed down from their parents to their young ones. But hey, I digress. The whole point, I went on a little rant there. I hope you guys found that insightful about my personal thoughts about homeschooling and why I'm very anti-public school, or very skeptical of public school. That's a better way of framing it. Homeschool continues to rise drastically, according to WAPO analysis shows. Many predicted families will return to public schools after the pandemic. There's many reasons why people are not returning to public school, and one of the reasons is you realize that government schools and schooling in general is merely to transmit values to your child. And who currently controls what's going on? You see it. The transgender stuff, the critical race theory stuff, in my opinion, that's trash, right? They're trying to pass these values on to your kids. And in the intro, we saw from the lady tried to make this argument that, it's more inclusive than the other options because you could be segregated. In homeschool, look, in my homeschooling thing, my wife and the neighborhood people, the neighborhood moms, sorry, they decided to do a little co-op. There's different races there, different lifestyles, different walks of life. My kid still has that same level of socialization. It's just more on the parents to be more intentional about it. And I think that's what we need to get back into. We need parents to get more involved back into the academic lives of their children. I think parents need to be more intentional about what values, what abilities, what skills do they want their kids to have. Like, for instance, I want my son to learn how to program around 6-7 years old. I want him to get familiar with that. And that's one of the reasons why I want to homeschool him as well, because I feel like I can actually teach him practical skills that he can use after he's 18. He don't have to be like, oh, I have to go to college for this. No. My uncle's a photo editor, a video editor. Why not learn editing from him? Why not teach myself how to edit and be so proficient at it by the time I'm 18 years old? I'll be employable, right? That's what I'm focused on. This is why I'm no longer, that's why in my mind, I think in 10 years, college will be irrelevant, right? You already saw, I did a video on the college before. Now there's trends like companies not requiring college degrees anymore, right? And that even you see people like entrepreneurs like Tim Pool, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, even they are very skeptical of the college degrees, because all college degrees is a credential. And if you're pro credentialism, you would like a college degree. If you're anti credentialism, you don't like college degree because it doesn't really evaluate your skills. It just shows, hey, look at the club I'm part of. Now, many people who are older than me may not see, hey, college degree is still important, but in this era, it's not as relevant as it was maybe 20, 30 years ago. But, I'm rambling. I'm sorry, guys, but I hope you find this insightful. Homeschool has become America's fastest growing form of education and continues to explode in popularity long after the pandemic era remote learning has ended. A new Washington Post analyst shows the dramatic rise in homeschooling that began during the pandemic continues throughout the school year that ended the past spring, according to the Post analysis, which looked at data from nearly 7,000 school districts across the country. Homeschooling continued popularity flies in the face of predictions that most families will go back in-person classes at school once controversial pandemic restrictions like mask mandates ended. Another concern parents had after the pandemic is learning loss in public school, which will also be driving some families into homeschooling. And that's one thing. That's another reason too, is that I have a lot of problems with how the current public school system, their current approach is to how they teach their kids. I'm more into Montessori. If you don't know what that is, you can Google that. I'm more into more alternative ways of teaching our kids. Do kids really need to sit 8 hours in a classroom to learn multiple subjects? Could we cut it down to 4? I'm looking for a more efficient way of doing that. And one of the talk is cheap. Look, I put my money where my mouth is. I'm doing that with my son. I say, hey, look, I'm teaching my son different types of things, right? I might expose myself what I do for work, but I don't really care. For instance, I'll teach my son stuff like what I do for work. I say, hey, look, son, here, this is what I do for work, right? Learn about how you make this stuff. Okay, Dad, I'll do. Like, I want to be able. I don't want my kid to just sit there and regurgitate information that I tell him. I want him actually be able to apply, right? And one of the things I talk with my wife personally, because we both homeschool him, is that we want to focus on reading, writing, and speaking, arithmetic as well, math, obviously, right? And we want him to be well-rounded, and we don't want him to be so I don't know, pigeonholed into one style of learning, which is regurgitation, aka memorization, because that's what the current school system in America is doing in all cases. But private school is a little bit more flexible, right? Because they offer more things because they just have more resources. But in public school, that's all they really focus on. Memorization. Can you regurgitate what you've been told? And to me, that don't make someone very smart in my eyes. I just think you're just used to doing what you're told. And this is why you get a lot of these Gen Z people who can't recite history because all you really taught them was a skill of brain dump. Okay, I'm gonna memorize this thing for a short period of time. After I'm done passing the test, I can forget all this information. And that's what's going on in our current education system today. 76% of American kids are educated in public school. Doesn't that explain why we like most people could consider the next generation stupider, dumber than the previous? Blame the public school for that because they're 76% of the problem. That's just how I look at it, right? And I don't want to support something that I believe is doing things inefficiently. Homeschooling surging popularity across many measurable lines of politics, geographics, and demographics, the Post analysis showed. The analysis looked at data from 32 states, which represent about 60% of school-aged kids. The data is incomplete because some states do not tally homeschoolers: Texas, Michigan, Connecticut, Illinois. Nevertheless, the number that can availably indicate that homeschooling has become a mainstay of American educational system. And this is why one of the reasons why I work so hard to put myself in a financial situation where my wife can be a stay-at-home mom, because I believe and this is one of the reasons why I want my wife to be a stay-at-home mom, is I want her to be the educator of our children, right? And I'm in the background, obviously, like, you know, hey, I think the kids should learn this. The kids should learn these concepts. The kids should learn philosophy, because that's one thing I think we miss in our school system as well, is that we don't think about philosophy and what's the meaning of life. Does life have any meaning? Like, these things get kids thinking about morality. And this is why you get these badass kids that we got right now in the United States, right? Before the pandemic, there was 1.5 million homeschoolers in the U.S., according to the National Center for Educational Statistics. Now there are between 1.9 million and 2.7 million homeschoolers in the country, the Post analysis estimated. Only 2 states, Georgia and Maryland, has been homeschoolers returned back to pre-pandemic levels, right? And Florida has the largest homeschooling populations amongst the state with available data. And this is why I advocate for school choice, right? I'm in Florida. You guys probably know this if you've been following me for a long time, and you see what I'm doing. And I already made the argument, hey, most homeschoolers, the large percentage of them are minorities. 16% Black, 15% Hispanic. They make up the majority of homeschoolers in this country today. And is it any coincidence that public school is also the worst option for minority students? It's technically the worst option for any American, but if you want to make the argument, because, you know, in the intro, the lady was like, oh, you know, it's more inclusive, and you get exposed to people that don't think like you. That don't matter if you're dumbing down our kids. It don't matter if you're teaching kids in a way that is not giving a good result, right? And all you have to do is look at TikTok, and that gives you a better estimate of where's the current mindset of kids today. I don't think a lot of kids can critically think, because, like I said in my earlier critique about public school and schooling in American in general, is they focus too much on memorization. But, you know, I digress. What do you guys think about homeschooling? What is your preferred method of schooling options? If you had kids, what would you put your kid in if money was not an issue? Would it be private school? Would you school them yourself, homeschool? Or you just leave them up into public school? Let me know your thoughts. I would like to hear them in the comment section below. Thanks for watching to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I really do appreciate it, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.